Hello everyone, Stephanie Davis here today. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm back with another interactive card. This time I'm using some Lawn Fawn supplies, including the Lawn Fawn stamp set Your Sublime. And so I'm stamping out some images I thought I would use. I did use most of them, but not all of them as usual. But I am stamping them out with some alcohol-friendly ink, and my favorite is the Gina K Amalgam ink. And I'm going to be using this die, which is the Magic Picture Changer die. So I had pre-cut on just some Nina cardstock, and I'm lining up these manatees, and this was my first time using this die, but it would have been better if I would have stamped everything a little bit to the right. So when you make this card, go ahead and use that little die and maybe draw where the square is, because it really would have been all better if I would have shifted everything about ½ inch to the right. So now I'm going to be using the Mermaid for You stamps. My favorite thing to do is to combine all sorts of different Lawn Fawn sets, as you guys know, and I will have them all linked below in case I forget to name some of them off. I'm lining the mermaids up right on the manatees because I thought that would make it work out perfect, but actually when you put the picture slider die together, it winds up going a little bit to the right, so I don't know if it really would have mattered or not. But this was, as I said, this was my first time using this die. When this die was released, this is exactly what I wanted to do for my first card when I first purchased this die, and I'm finally getting a chance now that I moved my craft room back downstairs to play more, and actually made this card back before we went on vacation, but I'm just now getting to edit it and release it and everything. But this is exactly what I had in mind when that die came out, and so I was just excited to play with it. And I was a little afraid it was going to be complicated, and I don't generally use dies that are complicated because as a busy mom of 3 kids, I don't have time to use complicated dies usually, as fun as they are, but this I found very easy. So here's all the images I have stamped out, and I'm going to begin coloring the sea turtle. The sea turtle is from Critters in the Sea. It's a much older stamp set that I still love. This is one of my very favorite things about Lawn Fawn, is that all the stamp sets seem to go together seamlessly. So there's endless opportunities for new cards, and every time I have tried to destash one stamp because I didn't know how to use it, I almost always wind up buying it again because the new release goes perfectly with it. So I'm coloring with Copics here, and I am using my favorite light green colors. YG25, YG23, YG01, and then in a little bit I'm going to add YG21 as well. So I just color them using the darkest to lightest, which is what I do when I have a small area to color, and then I go back and add some dots and details, which is the fun part to me. Now I'm looking at images on Google to get some color inspiration of how to color the deep sea diver, and I decided on these colors, the B26, B24, B16, and B29. And this is, again, there's some small spaces here, so I just start with the dark and then go up to the lightest. And I generally make it where the light source is on the right side, and I'm not fanatical about my light source, but I think it looks better to have some highlights, and so I do try to have the highlights be at the top and kind of the right side. But I don't know if that's because I'm right-handed or why, but it always seems to be that way. So I'm adding the shading down at the bottom more, and then using the light shades at the top, and trying to just shade in, put some darker colors in where the shadows would be, and underneath the mask and to the very left side where I think the shadows would be. And then I'll use the medium tone and blend that out, and then blend it all out with the lighter shade again. So I'm just really quick Copic coloring, and I really enjoy coloring, and especially now that I've moved all of my craft supplies down to the main floor, I think that's why I've just had a burst of crafty mojo, and all my ideas are coming to me again, and I'm finding more time to create now, and I'm really enjoying it. So for the little fish, I'm using B79, B29, and B16. And again, I'm adding little dots for scales, and just adding little detail here and there where I like to. And then now I'm going to go in with the yellow, and I'm going to color the little flippers as well as the rest of the fish with the yellow tones. Y18, Y13, and Y06. Just doing the same thing, trying to add some shadows where I think they would be, and without outlining the whole image, and then going back and blending it out a bit. So I do this on the flippers, the belt, and I go back and do the mask also. I wasn't sure if I was going to do the mask in gray or yellow, and I decided to do it in yellow. So I do go back and do that later, but right now I'm coloring the submarine. So this card had lots of Copic coloring, which I really enjoy, and I don't know if you guys, how much of you guys want to see of my coloring. You can watch me coloring, and if you'd like to. And then if you'd like to skip ahead to when I start assembling the card, then you can do that as well. Now I'm going to start coloring some of the sea life. I don't know if this is coral or what it is, but I'm coloring it like it's coral. And I'm using R27, R14, and R05. And then I do go in and add some R46 to get some deeper shadows as well. And just some quick coloring. I love to color these little things. And some of these didn't make the cut because you get such a small area, you really can't put a whole bunch in there. But I really enjoyed using this die set. It wasn't complicated and it came together much easier than I thought, so I can't wait to use it more. But I wish they would actually make a bigger one because a lot of the ideas I have, I got to put more stuff in there. It's too small of a little area. So I hope they make one of these that will take up the whole, at least like 4 inches by 4 inches or something like that. But I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will think it's a lot of fun too. So I'm finishing up coloring the mask and the oxygen tank, and I'm just using some cool gray colors to color those. And then it actually was a little darker than I wanted, so I just went back with my zero blender and lightened those up. And now I'm coloring the inside of the window, and all I'm doing is going around with BG01 and BG000, and I'm leaving the very middle of that completely empty. I'm not putting any color in there because I kind of wanted that to be like the reflection, and at least that's the look I was going for. I don't know how it turned out. And then now I'm going to color the skin tones, and I'm using the E50, E51, and E53 to color inside of his mask, as well as his little bitty hands. And then I'll go back and add just a little bit of shading around the edges. Next I'm going to color his hair, and I'm going to use pretty similar colors to the skin tones. I just try to make it kind of a light blonde hair. I always try to make it look like my youngest son's Jackson's hair. I don't know why. So that's the colors I use almost every boy I color. And then I do go back and add some E35 just to add a little bit of brown in there. And then I will go back with my white gel pen and add some detail. I always go back with black pen and white pen and add a little detail at the very end. So now I'm coloring the mermaids, and I'm starting out just coloring their skin, and I'm using my same skin tones I generally use, E50, E51, and E53. Just add a little bit of shadows underneath the hairline and where I think some shadows would be, but nothing too complicated. Just keep it simple and blend it all out with the lightest shade. And then I will go in quickly with some R11 to do the cheeks. I'm not sure if I showed that or not. So now I'm going to start coloring the tail, and I have to color them aqua because that's my favorite color, of course. And my favorite aqua colors at the moment are BG23, BG11, BG10, BG49, and then I do go in at the end just for the dots and add some BG57 just so I could have a much darker shade. But these are generally the colors I used here the most, these three. I find they blend together really well. But then I like to add a lot of dark contrast, so I use the BG49. And then I just go back and add some dots on where the shadow areas are, and to make it kind of emulate scales. And then I will pull out the BG57 at the very end, and then, oh, correct my little mistake, and just add some dot detailing with that BG57. And then I will go back with some BG23 and make some lighter dots as well. So here I'm coloring the mermaid's hair. I'm only going to show you the one because I do the same exact thing on both of them. And I'm using the red colors R27, R46, R14, and R05. And that gives me little mermaid hair, and that's slightly coral but slightly red. So I just go through and I do some little brush strokes to kind of give it the hair texture, and then I blend it out. I try not to get too crazy with it because I never like how it looks if I add too much, so I just add a little bit of hair strokes to it. And now I'm going to color the top of her little bikini top, I guess it is, and I'm using some purple shades V09, and then I marry that with the V04 to kind of get a in-between shade, and then I will pull out V01 as well and do the same with that. And so I have the markers laying down, but it's just so I can marry them easy, and I just borrow a little bit from the other shade, and then I'll go back and add dots and keep just borrowing from them. And that's what I love about Copics, is you can get a little bit of color from another color, so you don't need every shade that they have, even though I would love to have all of them at one point, but I really don't need them because I know I can marry them together. And I'm going to add more dots, of course, because I love adding dots and little details. And then I'm going to add the R11 for the mermaid's cheeks. Now I'm going to go in and color the, I don't know if it's kelp or seaweed, but I'm coloring it with some green shades. I'm using G09, YG17, and YG07. And now for my favorite part of this is actually the manatees. I love all animals, but I love manatees. And I hope to see some in person one day. But I'm using some warm gray shades to color these. I'm using W1, W3, W5, and W7. And just some quick shading in the shadows, and then go back with a lighter shade and blend it out. And then I'll add some dots and details, of course. And this is a point in the video where I feel like I bored you guys to death and I just want to put on music, but I know many of you don't want music. And so I try to just explain what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, so I apologize, but I just don't know what else to say. These are the colors I'm using, and they color the same way almost every time. And I do go on coloring more than I need to often just because I really enjoy it and it's fun for me. So you don't have to do all these adding little dots and details, but I really enjoy it. I feel like it gives each of the little images more personality, and I just enjoy it. So, but we're about finished with the coloring finally and can move on to assembling the card, which is a lot of fun as well. So now all the images are colored, and I went and die cut them out for most of them. There was one die I thought was missing and it just looked like a mushroom, so I missed it. I cut out some masks to apply over the manatees and the mermaids and the seaweed because I'm going to use distress inks with a stencil to get my background. So I'm showing you these two brushes. I have the Amazon version and the Picket Fence version. They're both great. They're both awesome. It's just the matter of what size you want to use. I really can't tell the difference between the two though. So get whichever ones you get the size and the price you like. I'm using Sea Glass Cracked Pistachio right now to try to get some soft blending. I really wanted the light to be coming from the top, and so I tried to leave it a little lighter up there, but a lot of this doesn't even show because it's such a small little square that a lot of my background doesn't even show. So now I'm using Mermaid Lagoon, and I'm trying to add shadows down at the bottom, and I'm going to even add more. I'm using the blue, I was using Distress Oxide inks, and now I'm using Blueprint Sketch of a regular Distress ink, a mini ink, just to get some really dark shadows, but again, they're not really going to show, I don't think. But it was fun and it turned out pretty, but most of it was hidden by the dye. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the mermaids. I'm trying to do the same thing, and I just have Post-its and random tape to hold the stencil down. I just use whatever's the cheapest, the quickest, easiest to grab, and will hold it down. I'm always going for what is the cheapest and what is the easiest usually to get my blending done. And then I'm going to go in and add some more shadows down at the bottom, go back up with Cracked Pistachio to blend it out. And trying to keep that light, the top part really light, but again, it doesn't really show. So, but it was really fun. I really enjoy ink blending, and I really do enjoy these brushes. I think it makes it a lot less work to blend. So now I went in with Cracked Pistachio, and that finishes the background. And now I'm trying out some new paints. I got this affordable set. It's called Pretty Excellent Little Paints. I'll have them linked down below from Amazon. And I'm using the white and the black to add my splatters. And I had never tried this paint before, and it worked out pretty well. A lot of it didn't show up because most of the splatters were covered with the mask, and so it didn't really show up. But I really did like how it looked, and it was a lot easier than getting out my gouache that I usually use. It did leave a little bit of a little residue that I had to rub off with my fingers on a few of them wherever the splatters hit. But I love removing those masks and seeing the reveal of how it looks after it's done. So now I'm going in and fixing any white areas that I didn't quite get. And I just used a paintbrush and that was damp. It wasn't wet, it was just barely damp. It's time to start assembling the card. So I found all those score lines, and I'm using my bone folder and my fingers just to kind of bend those down, and then I use my bone folder to crease all of those lines, and I just do it with my fingers gently first, and then I can get with my bone folder, I can get a really nice crease. I'm using some 1/8 of an inch Scor-Tape that I'm going to attach that with, and that's the best way. I wouldn't want to add liquid adhesive here because if it runs out, it's going to make it sticky, and basically you're making a track for the inside to go, the slider mechanism. So I scored it really well with my bone folder, and then I'm going to add more adhesive on the outside. So you really need 4 pieces. You put one on the inside and one on the outside of that 1/8 inch Scor-Tape. And then once you get it all cut down where you need it, then you remove the inside but not the outside yet. So I'm just applying all the Scor-Tape and using my bone folder to crease everything really well. And I'm removing that inside Scor-Tape because you do want to go ahead and attach that down. Then I'm using my bone folder to make sure it's really creased well and all lines up well. And I'm going to give it a little test run before I pull off that other adhesive. So I'm using my little powder tool from Eco, and this is how easy this is. You just put the first tab into the first slit, and then you put the second tab into the second slit, and the third into the third slit. So you just go along the line, putting the little tab into the slit, and that's all there is to it. And then it's got a little track, and once you apply the adhesive, it's going to slide. So I'm showing you the back here, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's all lined up right, and I'm going to use a little more of that powder tool just to make sure there's no stickiness before I pull the strips off. So I'm going to pull off the strips of Scor-Tape and make sure and hold it all together so I can lay the other side down and attach it, and that makes my track. I'm using some scissors to make sure I didn't have adhesive in the way, because you really want that to go back and forth good. And then once you put that down, it's all ready to go. So now I'm taking the add-on picture die, and I cut it out of some Sunburst pattern paper from Stunning Studios. And see, that's the little square, and once you cover everything up, it doesn't matter that I kind of stamped it a little too far to the left. And then I did add some more paper that stabilized it as well as covered where I inked. And now I'm going to add the little tab at the end to tell you to pull it. And then you pull it, and that's what it does. Isn't that adorable? I kind of couldn't quit playing with it. So now I'm going to add some adhesive and add my background. I used another sheet of that Sunburst paper, and I tried to kind of line it up. It's not going to line up perfectly, but I tried to line it up the best I could. And then I'm going to attach that with more adhesive to the card base. I almost forgot to stamp the sentiment, so I'm getting that on really quick. It says "See you soon," and it's from the Mermaid for You stamp set. And so luckily, since I have my little stamp platform, I'm able to add that sentiment. I could have never done that with a clear block, I'm sure. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some foam tape, adhesive squares, and then add my little sea diver. And then I had a little ink that I got on the card which I almost always do, but I just decide that's where I need another embellishment. So I've torn off more of that foam tape and popped the submarine up, and then I'll add the fish. The fish is kind of underneath there, so that's the only one I didn't add the foam adhesive squares with. And when you pull it, that's what it looks like. So I hope you enjoyed this card tutorial, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.